Welcome back, everyone. Today we're going to count down the top 10 worst songs of 2021. Now, some of you may know I've celebrated 5 years on YouTube back in June, and 2021 was my first full year of creating content on the platform. At the time, I never ended up doing a year-end best or worst list because honestly, I was still trying to figure out the direction of the channel that I wanted to take. But now, 5 years removed from 2021, I figured now would be the perfect opportunity to revisit that year and really look back at the music that defined it, both for better and for worse. And 2021 was a strange transitional year. The world was still recovering from the COVID-19 pandemic, and musically, you could feel that shift. There were a lot of genuinely great songs, memorable hits that came out during that time, but mixed in of all that are some absolute disaster that somehow managed to dominate the charts anyway. For this particular list, the main factor I'm looking at is simple: how well or how horrible these songs have aged. Some of these songs were annoying from day one, while others became unbearable after months of overplay, TikTok oversaturation, or hindsight exposing how shallow they really are. In this list, we'll use the 2021 Billboard year-end list. And before we begin, I do want to point out something shocking, because for the first time this decade, Drake is actually not on this list, and the same could go for Morgan Wallen. Considering that both artists have been recurring characters during these worst lists throughout the 2000s, that might be the surprise of this whole list. So with that being said, here are the top 10 worst songs of 2021. Before we begin, do me a favor and hit the subscribe button. It costs free $99, it helps out the channel, and you'll have zero regrets doing it. So without further ado, on to our feature presentation. Number 10. One of the biggest stories of 2021 was the continued rise of TikTok. By this point, the platform had become one of the most influential forces in music, capable of turning virtually anyone into a star overnight. And labels, they were chasing those viral moments. Artists were tailoring songs for short-form content, and chart success was becoming increasingly tied to what was trending on TikTok. Of course, that also meant a lot of songs blew up not because they were great, because they were attached to a trend. And some of these songs on this list outlived their viral moment and became genuine hits. Others quickly faded once the algorithm moved on, and the first song falls firms into that category.
You know about rolling down in the deep when your brain goes numb, you can go that.
And I don't think there's any better song to kick off this list than Astronaut in the Ocean, because back in 2021, this track was pretty much everywhere. TikTok couldn't escape it, radio didn't avoid it, and unfortunately, neither could the rest of us. Because at first, I could at least understand the appeal, the beat was catchy enough, the hook was memorable on first listen. The problem was once you get past that first initial impression, there's not really much to the song. The lyrics try to sound deep and introspective, but they come off more like vague motivational quotes you'll find on a social media post. And what hurts this song is how badly this song aged. A lot of songs in 2021 can at least be revisited for nostalgia, but this one feels completely tied to that specific moment in TikTok culture. Because once that trend died, even though TikTok hasn't, so did most of the songs appealed. And don't forget the overexposure this song had back in 2021. Because this song was played into the ground, every video, meme, and trend tried to use it over and over again. Masked Wolf himself never replicated the success because he rode a trend in a moment, and he's not the only one on this list to do that. Stay tuned for more. Number 9.
Beautiful mistakes I make inside my head. She's naked.
You know, there was a time when a new Maroon 5 song actually felt like an event. By 2021, that band had become the definition of music autopilot, and Beautiful Mistakes might have been one of the clearest examples of that decline. Because on paper, this song should have worked. You have one of the biggest pop bands of the last 2 decades team up with the hottest rappers in the world. Instead, the result of this song feels completely lifeless from start to finish, and it's pretty forgettable. The instrumental drifts by without leaving any real impression. Adam Levine sounds completely checked out, and the song never develops enough of a personality to justify its nearly 4 minutes runtime. It's a kind of track you could play in the background and be forgotten the second it ends. Now Megan Thee Stallion, she tries to inflict energy in her verse, but I don't think even she could have saved this. But what really hurts Beautiful Mistakes is that it represents everything people had criticized late stage Maroon 5 for. Safe songwriting, generic production, and absolutely none of the charisma that made their earlier hits stand out. And 5 years later, I struggle to find anyone who actively visits this song. It's not the worst 2021 song, but it was a mistake indeed. Number 8. Country music really didn't have a good 2021, and here's the first of 3 that made the list.
I love you just the way God made you, girl, he don't make mistakes.
By 2021, Nashville was looking for another crossover radio hit, and somehow this became one of the songs that dominated country radio, even if it was released back in 2019. The funny thing is, the message itself is fine enough. It's about loving someone for who they are instead of trying to change them. And that's generally a positive sentiment, and on paper, should make for a solid love song. The problem is the execution, because everything about it is so polished, safe, and predictable that it never feels sincere. Instead of sounding like a heartfelt tribute to a real person, it comes off like a collection of generic compliments that could apply to literally anyone. And listening to this song, I was reminded of Joey McIntyre's Stay the Same. That song carried a similar message, but leaned so heavily into that it almost came preachy, and Just the Way falls into a similar trap. It keeps repeating the same idea without adding any depth or personality. And the production also doesn't do it any favors. It's the kind of glossy assembly line country production that was all over the radio during this era. Nothing stands out, nothing surprised you, and by the time the song ends, you've probably forgotten what it sounded like. Number 7. Now back to artists who rode the TikTok wave to one-hit wonderland.
Burn away our carbon beam, knock your legs off. Try to get away from me. Had to stand off.
I'll give the song this. The production actually has some menace to it. The beat is easily the strongest part of this track, and the remix somehow managed to improve the original. And cause there were like, I don't know, 15 different versions of this song, and they became so popular that you forgot Spot Gotham was even on the song in the first place. Cause as an actual song, there's not much to talk about. It's basic flexing and a story about him ditching his girl at a party. There's not a whole lot of substance here. It feels less like a completed song and more like a beat that just happened to go viral. Now in 2021, Spot Gotham was shot in a drive-by shooting. Thankfully, he survived, but after that, his momentum pretty much disappeared, and we never heard from them again, except for legal issues. And that's probably the biggest reason why Beatbox landed on this list, because 5 years later, most people forgot that song even existed. Number 6. For rappers that I like, I hate when they embarrass themselves like this.
That ain't the baby, that's my baby.
Her friends and her mom hate me. Go. Lay down on the bed, do the cry, baby.
So yes, Megan Thee Stallion makes her second appearance on this list, this time as the lead artist alongside DaBaby. Because Cry Baby is basically a loud, over-the-top anthem built around childish taunts and cartoonish production. The entire gimmick is to be as obnoxious as possible, but instead of being fun, it just comes off exhausting and after a couple of listens. But I'll give Megan this. She tries, but her style of rapping at the time did not match the production. More on that in a bit. DaBaby, however, is where the wheels really started to come off, because by 2021, his flow has become painfully predictable. Every verse sounded like he was using the exact same cadence regardless of beat. Personally, I think that was the real reason why his momentum slowed down, not because what happened at Rolling Loud, but because audience were getting tired of hearing the same thing over and over again. And on this song especially, he sounds more checked out than engaged. And now the production itself, because that's what really got under my skin. The beat is intentionally abrasive and annoying. The baby cry effects pretty much wears out any welcome this song had, and the whole thing feels annoying than entertaining. Now I can't say Megan had a bad 2021, but I can't say she had a good one either, and this song is probably why. Number 5. This is what happened when you try to strike lightning in a bottle twice.
Take me to the country, show me where you're from. I said, Shawty.
Cruise, for what it was a pioneering song for the bro country era of music, for better or worse, but at least it felt like a genuine crossover hit. Little Bit, on the other hand, feels like two artists trying to recapture lightning in a bottle nearly a decade after the storm passed. But the real reason why this song made this list was Nelly calling himself the Black Tom Brady. Now here's the thing. Tom Brady's first year as starter was in 2001, and he led the New England Patriots to their first Super Bowl, defeating the St. Louis Rams, ending one dynasty while beginning another. and who happens to be from St. Louis? If he made that comparison back when he was at the peak of his career, he would have fell off pretty quickly. And ironically, this ended up being Florida Georgia Line's swan song, because the following year the duo split amid political differences, with Tyler Hubbard eventually finding some success as a solo artist, while Brian Kelly not so much. But looking back, a little bit feels like an appropriate farewell, not because it's memorable, but because it showed the creative spark was gone. The end result sounded less of a genuine hit, but more like a nostalgic cash grab. And 5 years later, almost nobody talks about Lil Bit, and honestly, I think that's a good thing. Number 4. Up next, we have a song that wound up being a bigger hit in 2022.
Sometimes all I think about is you. Late nights in the middle of June.
Heatwave probably had one of the strangest chart runs of the entire decade, because the song originally was released in 2020, but it didn't even debut until 2021, debuting at number 100, and from there it slowly climbed, and by year's end, it found its way to the top 10. Then 2022 happened. The song eventually reached number 1, setting the record for the longest climb to the top spot with 59 weeks, and became the biggest song of that year. Honestly explains why it's on this list. Overplay. I don't think Heatwaves is the worst list on a technical standpoint. The production isn't that bad, because I understand why people connected with the laid back atmosphere, but after hearing it everywhere for almost 2 years straight, this song went from relaxing to absolutely exhausting. And it doesn't help you that some of the lyrics started to wear thin after repeated listens, especially the infamous "you look so broken when you cry" line. What might have sounded emotional the first few times eventually started to sound more awkward the longer the song stayed around. And like a lot of artists on this list, Glass Animals never managed to follow up with another hit anywhere near this level. And honestly, I think Heatwaves is a perfect example of what happens when a good moment turns into too much of a good thing. A song can't survive being popular, the problem is when it refuses to leave. Number 3. I'll say this, 3, 2, 1 are all interchangeable. Depending on the day, you can shuffle these songs around and I probably won't argue with it. Now the first of these contenders is a cover.
Girl, put your records on. Tell me your favorite song.
Let me start off by saying this. The 2007 Corinne Bailey Rae version is genuinely a good song. It's warm, uplifting, and effortlessly charming. And there's a reason why it's still remembered nearly 2 decades later. Unfortunately, Mitt Romney completely misses what made the original work. Instead of bringing a fresh perspective to the song, he essentially tries to gender flip the lyrics while stripping away all of its personality. The result feels less of a reinterpolation and more of a watered down imitation. And then there's the vocal performance. He comes off strangely unlikable throughout the track. Constant pitch correction and processed vocals made the performance feel artificial rather than adding emotion. They remove whatever authenticity the song could have had. And the production doesn't help either. A great cover song should either honor the original or offer a completely new take on it. This version does neither. It takes a song full of charge and turns it into something generic, forgettable, and ultimately unnecessary. And that's why it lands at number 3. Number 2. Again, 3, 2, 1 were all interchangeable. Here's the second of these. Because The Good Ones is the kind of country song that sounds like it was created by an algorithm designed to generate the safest possible radio hit. Everything about it feels so overly polished, over-calculated, and completely devoid of any personality. The lyrics are what really pushed this song over the edge for me. The entire track revolves around repeating tell us how amazing her man is, but it never goes much deeper into that. Instead of painting a picture of what a real relationship is, it feels like a collection of generic compliments stitched together into a song. And then there's the production, as it comes off as oversold, and it's a similar problem I had with I Hope. Stay tuned for the worst list of 2020. But what makes this song especially frustrating is that it was almost everywhere on Nashville radio. Because they embraced it, award shows embraced it, and it became one of those songs that felt completely inescapable. The more I heard it, the less I liked it. And 5 years later, my opinion really hasn't changed. If anything, and it's gotten worse with age. When looking back at the biggest country hits of 2021, this was one of the first songs that came to mind, not because it's memorable, but because it perfectly represents how bland and formulaic mainstream country could become during this period. However, it's not the worst song of 2021. But before I get to my top pick, let's go through a few dishonorable mentions. This barely even qualifies as a song. It felt like a Pop Smoke imitation stretched into 2 minutes of repetitive noise, and honestly, the fact CJ disappeared almost as quickly as he showed up tells you everything you need to know. Honestly, be Dua Lipa's weakest song she's ever released. The big issue mostly comes on production, which sounds oddly lifeless compared to the disco-heavy energy that made Future Nostalgia work so well in the first place. If I didn't love you, I'd be good by now. If I made a worst list back in 2021, this probably would have landed in the top 5. I aggressively hated this song at the time. The overdramatic production, lifeless chemistry, and painfully generic country writing made this feel more like a label-manufactured power ballad than an actual duet. And somehow Jason Aldean will go on to release an even worse song later this decade. I'm too sexy for this syrup, too sexy for your girl, too sexy for I did say Drake didn't make this list proper, but that didn't extend to the dishonorable mentions. I honestly don't know how this missed my list. Drake usually makes this list without trying. Hell, that might be his mantra this whole decade. I don't want a lot for Christmas. There is just one thing I need. Y'all know the drill. Before we continue, if you like what you see, go ahead and hit the like button. Also, don't forget to hit the subscribe button as well. And now, let's continue with the video. Number 1. I don't think this could go to anything else. I kid you not, I was going to leave this song off this list entirely as I felt everyone torn this song to bits and it's pretty easy. But 5 years later, this song aged like, well, what Wendy's going through right now, which is a ton of closure due to unnecessary overpricing and the quality dipping over time. When Burger King start to pass you, that's a problem. Oh, my bad, I might have made most of you hungry, but trust me, you're going to lose your appetite when talking about this song. The entire concept of this song is Walker Hayes bragging about how low maintenance his girl is. Apparently, her personality consists of dipping fries into a Frosty, thinking of a chain fast restaurant food is peak luxury, and that's basically the entire gimmick. The hook revolves around comparing his girl to a Bourbon Street steak with an Oreo shake with some whipped cream, and yes, that's supposed to be the catchy centerpiece of the song, and what makes this even worse is how obviously engineered the track feels. This wasn't a song that blew up because people connected deeply with this emotional and artistically. It exploded because it was the perfect TikTok bait. Short hook, easy dance trend, repetitive lyrics, and enough brand references to stick in people's head whether they want it or not. And as for Walker Hayes, this was basically lightning in a bottle for him. Outside of this track, he never established himself as a major hit maker. In fact, he already had a song that landed on my worst list in 2022, and honestly, time has only made this one even more annoying. This song absolutely bites. And no, I'm not talking about Buffalo Bites either. And with that being said, Fancy Light by Walker Hayes is easily the worst song of 2021. So tell me what you think in the comments below. Were there any other songs that I left off this list? Don't forget to hype, like, and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Cue my wonderful life lady.
Yeah, we fancy like Applebee's on a date night. Got that Bourbon Street steak.
The following was a jgtv production. Thanks for watching.
You gotta be careful when you pick fights.